So I'm going to abbreviate my opening statement just to be able to accommodate all that. Obviously, we don't need to convince everyone about what impact this pandemic has had on all Americans, from a healthcare perspective, certainly, but also from an economic perspective. I also don't think we need to do a lot to convince people that small businesses have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic, and all small businesses of every kind have been hurt by it across the country. The purpose of this hearing is to focus specifically on the even greater impact that the pandemic has had on minority-owned small businesses. They're as bad as it is for all small businesses. It is catastrophic and terrible. It has been even worse, if you can imagine it, among minority-owned businesses. Part of this disparity can be explained by the sectors that have been hit hardest by the COVID crisis. Construction, restaurants, hotels, transportation. These are sectors of our economy in which minority ownership is higher than it is in other sectors. But the data from the Census Bureau suggests that only 27% of small businesses have enough cash on hand to cover 3 or more months of operations. Those numbers of the number of businesses that have enough cash is much smaller than 27% when we are talking about minority-owned businesses. And so today, the major question we face is one of uncertainty. What happens next as communities, some are reopening, partially reopening, some have reopened and have had to pull back. We're telling people not to go out, and we're telling people not to go to places. So in essence, we are, and they're following our advice, hopefully, but as they do, it has an economic toll. So it's hurting all small businesses. But again, we're seeing that disproportionate impact is even higher among those that are owned, minority-owned. And so the two goals we have specifically to address is this disparity in the damage that's being done, but also the concern that there'll be a disparity in the recovery, that if some of these businesses go under, they won't be there to be able to recover and thrive. And so we're part of what we've already talked about and continue to talk about as we try to prepare the next round of assistance to small businesses is not just so we can target the relief to more small businesses, but also how do we reach that? How do we make sure that assistance reaches the most underserved small businesses as well? So one of the most important lessons we learned in PPP, some of the answers come from some of the sectors that save more jobs than others. The overall unemployment rate has dropped in April from an April high of 15 to 11%. However, the African American unemployment rate remains at 15%. So there's just an example of an employment disparity that we need to address. So there are some clues as to how to go after this. The first is, according to the SBA's data, only 3 sectors supported more jobs per dollar of PPP funds in low-income areas than they did for the nation as a whole. So there are 3 sectors in which PPP funds helped support more jobs than they did in low-income areas than they did nationally. The 3 sectors were manufacturing, healthcare and social assistance, and retail. So that tells us there that anything we do to be helpful to those sectors should have a positive outcome or an impact on these communities. Another lesson is about access. Many minority-owned businesses have experienced problems accessing the capital because they lack relationships with SBA-approved lenders. There's been progress. As a proportion of the total quantity of loans dispersed, minority-owned businesses receive PPP loans in equal or greater volume than their share of business ownership in the U.S. economy. And I think some of that was due to some of the changes that were made to the program as it went on. For example, allowing as many lenders as possible to participate was key to this progress. We'll need to do more. The CARES Act and the program within it approved 303 community development financial institutions, CDFIs, approved 171 minority depository institutions, MDIs, and 19 fintechs, financial technology companies, to provide these loans and more access. So that was helpful, and it's something we want to retain and build on. So we recognize that right now, as we talk about the future, we're in a different place than we were in March when we first started talking about it. Some businesses will need additional short-term relief. Others are going to need access to low-cost, long-term working capital to recover, which was already hard for them to access. It'll be even harder after this. PPP is basically a short-term grant to help keep a business open and their employees on payroll. But the hit that many small businesses are taking is much deeper than just staying open can make up for. You just are not going to be able to generate enough revenue in this environment to stay open under the constrictions that we're facing. So that's why one of my proposals, built on input and ideas that Senator Young first innovated, is proposing an expansion of the SBA 7A program to make available targeted long-term, low-interest loans to small businesses that are located in low-income communities. And obviously that needs to be fleshed out further, but it's something we care about a lot. So that's what we'll keep working on. Ultimately, anything we pass will have to be bipartisan. That's been the tradition of our work on this. So both because it's better that way and because it's the only way to get it done, that's what we intend to do. We work very closely with the ranking member and Senator Shaheen and Senator Collins, who's not a member of this committee, Senator Langford as well, who's not a member of this committee, and then all the members of this committee who have input. And that's what we intend to continue to do, because we need to do something, we need to do it soon, and we need to make sure it's getting to the right people in the right way.